Hey guys, welcome, Mr. Smith's Kitchen. I'm Brian, Mr. Smith Kitchen. If you're new to my channel, glad you stopped by. I hope you get something out of our channel. Here we do a lot of cooking, baking, some socializing. I mean, that's kind of what we do, but mostly cooking and baking. You'll also see some canning on my channel, a little bit of gardening here and there. I mean, we're pretty much just documenting my life, but my emphasis is mostly around food. In general, whether it be cooking it, baking it, growing it, preserving it, things like that. If you're returning to my channel, thank you. Hands down, thank you. I take nothing for granted when it comes from you taking your time out of your day to spend some time with me. You know, I know how important time can be, hands down. Lord knows it's a precious commodity for me. So anyhow, that being said, don't forget, subscribe button down there somewhere. Right next to the subscribe button is a notification bell if you want to know when my videos come out. And being so inclined to watch them, thumbs up, thumbs down, or like right above them. They, or over here, I never know. Thumbs up, thumbs down. They don't, personally, I don't care if you hit thumbs up or down. But if you hit those, it does help grow our channel. It gets us out there in people's feeds, allows them to be a part of our community where we can hear their voices too. So that is always helpful. That being said, today's Thursday, now that we got the business end out of the way. And with it being Thursday, I thought we'd do some baking. So we're going to make a pie. I am really into pies lately, and which is good because... if you didn't know, shameless plug coming, we have our new Mr. Smith's Kitchen Facebook group where we share recipes, look at pies, and I've started a Mr. Smith's Kitchen business page where I'm selling pies, cakes, brownies, baked goods in general, some cookies, and you know, so far we've managed to bang a few out the door. And this recipe here is one I'm trying for the first time. I want to give it a shot because I've never had this pie before I actually make one for a gentleman that had asked for one, and it's a raisin pie. So they're a classic pie, very old school, not a lot of ingredients. I think it's something that we can definitely bang out here, and I think it would be fun to try. I think it'll be fun to do. So that being said, let me get the camera turned, and we'll get down here and get started. All right, give me just 1 second to get everything fixed. All right, so. Got the camera situated so that way we can kind of see. If you are new to my channel, my kitchen is not big at all. It's literally maybe 8 foot by 12 foot. It is definitely a galley kitchen, so we're limited on space. And premium space is always at a premium. So anyhow, first thing we will need to make this pie, I always go over recipes, and I'll give you the ingredients in cups, teaspoons, tablespoons, but I'll also give it to you in grams when possible. That way we know what we're getting into. And right, first thing we got, recipe right here. And we'll make this recipe. If we like it, we'll keep it. If we don't like it, we'll pitch it. But if we think it's worth saving and working with, we will save it and work with it. We've done all three. So, raisin pie, very old school pie. Things you will need to make this are relatively simple. You will need one pie crust, whether you make it yourself, and if you do make it yourself and you need a recipe or you want to try it, I have one. I have one that's just on how to make the pie crust. I've got one from a couple videos back that we make the pie crust together, and then we made it one more time in the apple pie video a long time ago. I'll leave a link for that in the description if I figure out how. So, that being said, other things you will need a sauce pot, preferably a heavy bottomed pot. You get what you pay for. Light pans without a heavy bottom. I mean, this is cast iron coated. They have a tendency to scorch things when they're in here. Yes, they heat up quickly, but they will scorch things. The other thing you will need is a scale if you don't already have one. I always recommend these. Gives you accuracy and consistency, and in baking that can be essential. And that is really it, other than your pie crust, a pie pan, a saucepan, and a scale. Boom, done, easy. Nothing to mix, nothing to blend. So the first thing we will need to do is we're going to turn our pot on. There's nothing in there yet, but I'm going to get this one warming up. Now, if you don't have a cast iron saucepan, then you're fine. But to this pan, we're going to add 2 cups or 280 grams of raisins. Now, I bought, these are kind of like a multicolored raisin. You know, there's some white ones in there. There's some dark ones in there. Use whatever raisins you like is what I'm gathering from all the different recipes I looked at. You know, you can use your white grape raisins, your red raisins, you know, whatever you prefer. That's kind of like a healthy blend of both. And we're going to dump those in the pot. Like I said, 2 cups, 280 grams. Next thing we're going to add to that is 1.5 cups of water. And we're going to add 1/2 cup of orange juice. Now, if you don't want to use orange juice, you don't have to. I saw an equal balance of both in the different recipes I looked up before we came up with this. And that's kind of how it ran. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this warm up. And when it starts to boil, we're going to let it boil for like 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to let this heat up and boil, and I'll be back when it's boiled for 5 minutes, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, see you here in just a brief second. So we're about 2 minutes away from having to move on to the next step. It's been boiling for about 3 minutes. So the next step is actually to put some dry goods together. So we've got 1/2 cup of brown sugar, which is 100 grams. And that's packed brown sugar, which means you've pushed it down into the measuring cup or you've used your scale, and you've got 100 grams. See how it comes out? And it looks just like the bowl. That's packed. To that, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon, 1 gram of salt, kosher salt. You know, now if you have kosher salt, you don't have to use kosher salt. You can use table salt. If you do use kosher salt and it's coarse grain, make sure you grind it up first a little, or somebody's getting a mouthful of salt. Happens every time. And to that, we're going to add 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, which is about 1 gram. Cinnamon's hard to weigh because it's so light. And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons or 20 grams of cornstarch into a bowl. All right. And then we're going to take our whisk, and we're going to whisk that together. We want to get that combined before we put it in to our boiling stuff. It kind of helps get everything going. So we got that all together. Timer's about to go off for our 5 minutes of boil. And not that I know for certain that, because I did not read anywhere why we're boiling the raisins, but I'm assuming it's to soften them, to help in the baking process. So we've got that all good to go. Timer's about to go off here in 10 seconds. So I think we can kill her 10 seconds early. Well, actually, it'll be about 4 seconds early. And then we're going to pour our dry good mix into the boiling orange juice and water. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there for a second. And then that way, it can all come together. And what we're going to do is we're going to continue to cook this till everything runs clear. I don't know if you can, yeah, you can see it, how it got cloudy on us. What will happen is that as that cornstarch starts to activate, it will start to gel, and this will become clear. And as soon as that happens, which shouldn't take but a minute or so, we will move on to the last 2 ingredients. Okay, I mean, that literally took a minute, and now we're down to clear. So here, I'll bring it. See how now it's clear, and before it was really light in color, and now it's just got a nice gel look to it. So what we got to do now, while it's still hot, we want to take it off the heat, turn your heat off. We're going to add 1 tablespoon of white distilled vinegar, and we're going to add 1 tablespoon of just regular old unsalted butter. I mean, you could use salted butter, I suppose, but if you have unsalted butter, which is best in baking, use it. And we're just going to stir this in, just like such. With the butter thing, if you are using a salted butter, I would leave that 1/4 teaspoon of salt out. If not, it could really be salty. It could potentially make your dish, or your baked good or whatever, salty. So anytime you're using butter and salt in a baked good, most generally it calls for unsalted butter. So what we got to do now that we've got all that mixed in and it's looking good, we just have to let this sit and cool to room temperature. So now would normally be the time that you would make if you're making a pie crust, I'd make it now. That'll give this time to cool down to room temperature, because it's going to take about 40 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on the temperature of your kitchen, for it to cool down close to room temperature. What would happen is if we were to put this in the pie crust right now, it would literally turn your pie crust to mush. I mean, it happened to me with the first few pies I ever made. The first cherry pie I ever made with lattice, which was my first experience with heating up a filling, my lattice just fell apart. So we want to get this as cool as possible, as close to room temperature as possible, and then we'll move on to the putting it together, assembly, and talk about baking it. All right, I'll see you here in just a little bit. All right, so we let the filling cool, and now all we got to do is get it in the pie. So right now would be the time that, like, when you're near the end of making your pie crust, we're going to go ahead and turn on our oven. So we're going to set our oven to 425 degrees. We always want to make sure there's nothing in the oven, because that's a thing. You'll find that as you grow in your kitchen equipment, the oven actually becomes valuable real estate for many things. So we went ahead and got our bottom pie crust together. I actually already had mine made. Or, like I said earlier, I mean, if it's pie crust isn't your thing, or you're still learning, or you don't have time or whatever, it's okay, contrary to popular belief, to use a store-bought pie crust. There is nothing wrong with that. I mean, remember, we're making this for our family, and homemade is nice if you have the time. Or as you practice it, it does become easier to make. I can usually make a top and bottom crust in about 15 minutes. I mean, really, with the food processor. So anyhow, now, as you can see, it almost looks more like a good baked bean, which is really cool. And I did get some of the filling on my finger, and it's got a really cool taste. If you like raisins, this is going to definitely be the way to go. So all we have to do, now that our oven is getting on its way up to 425, and let's say the oven doesn't hit 425 by the time you're done getting your pie together. Now, if you did make your own crust, a good opportunity to turn the oven on would be like when you're starting to first roll it out. I did not, for a couple reasons. A, my kitchen is very small. It gets hot very quick, and as you may note, I am literally right next, my workspace is literally right next to the oven. Well, I have found, after making a few different pies, that my pie crust becomes very hard to work with very quickly if I have the oven on. So I don't turn the oven on unless I need to. Where, like now, my top and my bottom are already done. So now I can turn the oven on and we're okay. I don't have to sweat it. But let's say that you're in that same predicament. You forget to turn your oven on, or you just don't turn it on the last minute, or don't want to. As soon as you get your filling in and get your top on, put it in the fridge. Just set it in the fridge. That's all you have to do. It'll keep, obviously. And then once your oven warms up, take it out of the fridge and pop her in the oven and let her go. So we got that done, got it in there. That actually filled it up quite nicely. I had told Chris I think I would have put more than the 2 cups of raisins in there. And her response to me, because she's had raisin pie before, she knows exactly what it tastes like, or supposed to taste like. So she'll know if I screwed this up or not. And she said that was actually is how it's supposed to look. So we'll see. She said it's supposed to have a consistency of a pecan pie. So I went ahead and I put my top crust in the fridge also. And that was the reason for that. So that way I could literally just lift it up. And you want to make sure you vent it. Now, as far as venting goes, you can do this a couple different ways. I just did a nice little pattern in the center here and called it a day. But you could just put a hole in the center and just take a knife and put some slits in it. I find it easier to put my vent holes or whatever design I'm going to do or whatever it is on the crust while it's on, right after I roll it out. That way I've got a good flat surface. To try to put your vent holes on here, like in this case, that's kind of it's very jelly, so it's going to, cause your crust to move around a little bit, and you don't want that. So I'm actually going to let this sit for just a minute so this crust can warm up a little bit. And then when I come back, we'll talk about what to do next. All right, be back in 1 second. We let the edges warm up a little bit. That way they're pliable, because what we're going to do is we're going to tuck these under, right? And I went ahead and I took a pair of scissors and I just trimmed it up to make it nice and even so we didn't have a bunch of floppiness around it. And all I have to do is, I don't know if you can, here, let me see if I can bring in, hold on 1 second. Let's move you up a little bit and that way we can get a better view. All right, hold on 1 second. Okay, I hope that's a better view now. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pick up our crust and we're going to fold it over. All right, both pieces. What that does is it helps seal the crust so we don't have bubbling. And something I've noticed that I'm sure there's a million other bakers out there that have done this for years has noticed, is that it gives you a thicker crust. Now, you could say, yeah, but I don't like a thicker crust. And, okay, I get it. You don't have to have this. There's a million and one ways to do this. But it does two things in this case. If I do nothing else with this pie but leave it like this, right? It has a tendency, I've noticed, to not burn. Where if you have a thin crust edge, a crust ring on here, they have a tendency to burn or start to get dark quicker, and you got to put a pie ring on, which is fine. I have a pie ring. Matter of fact, it's readily available in case we need it. But chances are good I may not. There's a few tricks I've learned to keep your crust from burning, at least your crust ring. One of them is have a thicker crust. Second one is an egg wash, which we're going to put on this. It'll give it a nice golden brown color, and I'm sold on the egg wash myself. You can also use creamer, like a heavy whipping cream, or a mixture of just egg white. You can use egg white and cream. You can use just an egg yolk, but I prefer just one good egg, instead of one bad egg, to take care of it. All right, let me finish getting this together and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, we got it tucked under, and like I said, we could leave it just like this. That would be, just as good too. But instead, I'm going to do 2 fingers, all right? I'm going to put them right here, and I'm going to take my another finger right there, and I'm going to push in and out. And that gives it that pleated look, that is famous for pies. And then I can just go back and straighten it up afterwards. So, and you can also do this with your knuckles. You can, I don't know if you can, here, let's see if I can do it this way. You can do your knuckles, 1 knuckle in between 2 on the inside, just like that. And it gives it a nice pleat, just like such. And this, for me, this was actually the hardest thing for me to learn, was how to do this, with my knuckles or even with my fingers. I really struggled. This is one of the things I had to work on. But, make enough pies, it becomes a little easier. I still don't think it feels incredibly natural, but it works. Okay, so we got those done. One thing I still have to work on is how to get it even. For whatever reason, I got, it's nice, and all of a sudden it goes small on me. But that's okay, I'll figure it out. That's kind of, I think, the nuance of having a homemade pie is there's going to be, it's not made with a machine. Yeah, the machine is your hands, and that's what makes it cool and special. All right, so last thing we have to do before we put it in the oven is put an egg wash on it. We're just simply going to use a brush. You know, I've got a plastic or a nylon brush here. You'll see some people use really nice, what look like painter brushes. I don't have one. Because I learned that you can't just use, I mean, you could if you bought the right painter's brush, but for the most part, you don't want that, you know, they're not made for food, in my opinion. So we'll get this brushed on here. You want to get it on there fairly even. All right, so we got the egg wash on there, nice and as even as possible. It's okay if it's not perfect. And now I'm just going to sprinkle a little sugar on the top there. Now, here's where a coarser grain sugar would probably come in handy, but I don't have any. All I got is 100% pure cane sugar, and I got a lot of it. So that's what it's getting. And all that does is just adds a touch of sweetness to the top. You know, although tasting that filling, I don't know if it really needs it. So let's talk about what we're going to do. So with this pie, we are going to put it in the oven at 425 degrees per the instructions, and we're going to bake this for about 30 to 35 minutes. Now, even though it didn't say in any of the recipes, I'm going to guess we're going to look for two things, because that seems to be, this is technically a fruit pie, all right, or as I've learned, a counter pie. And with that, we look for two things. It has to be right around 180 degrees, you know, just like all the other fruit pies we've made. And we want a nice golden crispy crust, and it needs to be bubbling. So when you look at your pie in the oven at, say, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, if you can see it bubbling in your vents, then you're in good shape. You know it's good to go. You need it to bubble. You need it to reach that 180 degrees, because that's what completely sets that cornstarch, you know, and gets it to ensure that it's going to gel and be a good pie filling and not runny when you cut into it. At least that's what we're hoping for on this. So like I said, because I've never actually made this pie before, so we're making it together the first time. And like I said, you should have a good golden brown crust. Now, that being said, at about 20 minutes, 15 minutes, give it a look. If your crust is starting to burn on the edges, that crust ring we made, you can either take a pie ring, like I have, I've showed you a few different times, or you can just take some aluminum foil and lay it over it, you know, or make a ring, like just to go around that outer crust ring, because that seems to be the part that always burns. And then that way, the heat will deflect off of it and it won't cook anymore, it won't bake anymore. So let me get this in the oven, and when I come back, we'll take a look at it and talk about what we got to do. All right, I'll see you here in just a little bit. All right, so we baked her for 35 minutes in the oven, and let's take a look at her. See how she turned out. She looked gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And there we are in all our fame and glory, our first raisin pie. Now, I pulled it out of the oven after 35 minutes. I didn't turn the oven off, and I temped it, you know, with my thermometer. If you don't have one, get one. Don't go cheap, but they're not horribly expensive. I think that one was right around 20 bucks. It might have been a little more than the scale, maybe, or right around there, and it's digital. You also want to get an oven thermometer if you don't have one of those. But there's how we turned out, right there. Absolutely beautiful and gorgeous. So, what are we going to do now? We're just going to let this sit on the rack and cool. We're going to let it cool down to about room temperature. No need to try to bust into that thing piping hot. Plus, we want to make sure that it has time to cool down and solidify. Because right now that filling, even though it's actually quite thick for even coming out of the oven hot, is still very gelatinous, and it's very hot. I mean, it's 190, almost 190 degrees. So we'll leave it sit there. We'll let it cool itself down to room temperature, 72 degrees. It may take an hour, hour and a half. No rush. We're going to have it this evening, probably with supper. So that way, but we're going to try it all the same. If I'm going to sell one, I want to know what they taste like. We may sell more. You never know. I just know had somebody ask to make one, and I said, absolutely. And all in all, not a hard pie to make. I spent, I think, more time making the crust than I would of the pie filling. So, I'm going to let this cool down to room temperature. When I come back, we'll cut it up and see how it tastes. All right? Make sure we did our job right and it's nice and solidified and, it's not real runny and going all over the place. So, anyhow, I'll be right back. Okay, guys, so we let the pie cool. Got the day done. It actually cooled all day. So, let's take a look at it and we'll get a piece cut and see where we stand from there. All right, there's our pie again. Looks really good too. I think as far as smell and looks go, I think we're doing okay there. I think. But then, hey, what do I know? So let's get us a piece cut here, and we'll see how she turned out. That is that. I tell you, that fierce piece can be a colossal pain in the butt. But all I lost was some bottom crust. So we're in good shape. Oh yeah, that actually gelled up real nice. So I thought, there we are there. Absolutely no leakage at all, so to speak. All right, give me 1 second. We'll take a look at the piece that I cut. All right, yeah, there's the piece right there that we could just cut. Like I said, I lost part of the crust there in the center. But yeah, that held together very well. I've never had one of these before, so this will be a first. I like raisins. I've just never known anybody to make a raisin pie. So, cheers. Let's see how it tastes. That's really good. It's not horribly sweet. It's just sweet enough. It kind of tastes like grape jelly, but it kind of tastes like raisins. I'm not even sure how to describe it, but it's good. I like it. Hopefully that's how it's supposed to taste. Grace will tell me. I just know I like that. Wow. That's really good. Try this. Let me know if you do. It's not hard to make at all. It's really easy to make. And it's outstanding. Hands down. You'll make friends with this, I guarantee it. So, let me know if you do try this. I'm thoroughly impressed. But, let me know if you like it. Let me know if you don't. I think you will, though. It's easy and it tastes great. Sorry. But, so anyhow, next week, I think, we're going to cook something, because like I said yesterday, I've got like 9 different recipes that I really want to try, so that's 9 weeks worth of dinners, and they're all fairly easy to do, and that's good, to be quick. Dessert-wise, I don't know what we're going to try next week. There's like 3 or 4 things I have saved that all of them look delicious. One's like this chocolate lava fudge brownie. It's crazy, but it looks amazing. And we may try that. And then there's a cake. But that being said, till next week, I love you. I love you very much. Tell somebody else you love them and you love them very much. It's going to make them feel a whole lot better. It's going to make you feel good to say it. I guarantee it. Yeah, and that's good. People need to hear that. Take them a piece of this pie. I think they'll love you forever and be a friend for life. All right. Till next week when we'll cook something or bake something. I'll talk to you later. All right. Love you. Bye.